I am Dr. Kay Fontana, life force coach and grief recovery specialist, and I am deeply familiar with the pain of loss, having experienced many throughout my life. At just 9 years old, I lost my brother to cancer and witnessed my parents' immense grief, which was unbearable. Years later, my mother lost her battle with Alzheimer's, and then my father was diagnosed with cancer and passed away a week after his diagnosis. Most recently, in January 2023, I experienced the devastating loss of my husband and soulmate of 40 years due to multiple health issues. In between were countless other losses, including family members, friends, co-workers, beloved pets, and even finances. However, I turned my pain into my purpose and passion to share strategies to help you get through your darkest days and navigate the complexities of grief. This is the Healing Our Grieving Hearts podcast. Welcome to today's episode where I'm going to share my thoughts on what happens when children grieve, specifically around death. This topic really resonates very close to home for me. About the time I turned 9 years old, and right before Christmas many years ago, my first experience with death was my grandfather who died. Around that time, my older brother was diagnosed with cancer, melanoma to be exact. My parents traveled to California from Phoenix every week for treatments because cancer treatment at that time was not available in Arizona. My parents left my sister and me in the care of our grandmother every time they traveled. 6 months after my brother's diagnosis and a few weeks after his 17th birthday, I came home from summer camp at a local park and my parents informed me that my brother had died. I believe I understood the concept and permanence of death at that time, but didn't understand the concept of not talking about it. After the funeral, my dad, who was an artist by profession, retreated to his art studio in the back of the house, which was his therapy. And my mom eventually went back to work and likely used crafts and piano as her outlet. Neither one of them talked about my brother and how his death affected our family. Granted, I was only 9 at the time, but I remember a lot and don't recall any conversations that would help me feel at ease. It was as if it was some big secret. This represents just one of the many ways adults unintentionally contribute to unresolved grief in children. However, I want to emphasize that I harbor no ill feelings toward my parents for their avoidance of the topic of death. This was a common response then, and to some extent still remains today. Discussions about death, loss, grief, and bereavement tend to be avoided due to a lack of information on how to articulate our emotions surrounding death. Parents often shy away from such conversations out of fear of appearing vulnerable in front of their children and wanting to shield them from worry. Yet, I can assure you that despite their efforts, I was indeed laden with concerns. The successive losses of my grandfather and brother within a span of 6 months left me with plenty on my mind, often keeping me awake at night, consumed by thoughts of who might be next. Would it be one of my parents? My sister, my grandmother, or would it be me? I also lived in fear that friends and teachers at school would ask me about my brother, as I didn't want to lie, but I was conflicted by the perception that I was supposed to keep this big secret. That was a lot of pressure for a 9-year-old. Avoiding conversations about the deceased individual or the loss itself can leave children feeling isolated and their grief minimized. When adults sidestep discussions surrounding death, children may interpret the silence as a signal that their emotions are not valued or understood. This lack of acknowledgement can lead to feelings of confusion, loneliness, and even guilt for grieving. Children often rely on adults to guide them through the process of grieving, and when this guidance is absent, they may struggle to come to terms with their emotions and find closure. Recognizing and addressing a child's grief is essential in helping them navigate the healing process effectively. Adults may contribute to unresolved grief in children by minimizing the child's feelings or telling them to be strong, instead of allowing them to express their emotions. I distinctly remember at my brother's funeral that an adult leaned over to me and said those exact words, "Be strong." I was a bit puzzled by the statement and was not sure exactly what I was supposed to do with that information as a tender age of 9. Was I supposed to be strong and suck it up, or be strong for my parents and be an adult? There were so many unanswered questions, and frankly, I was afraid to ask. Encouraging children to be strong in the face of loss poses a risk of invalidating their emotions and suppressing their natural grieving process. While the intent behind this phrase may be to instill resilience, it can inadvertently send the message that it is not acceptable to express vulnerability or sadness. Instead of urging children to mask their emotions with a facade of strength, adults can adopt a more supportive and empathetic approach. An alternative method involves validating and normalizing the child's emotions, reassuring them that it's okay to feel sadness, anger, confusion, or any other emotion that may arise during the grieving process. By creating a safe space for the child to express their feelings authentically, adults can help them understand and navigate their emotions effectively. Encouraging healthy outlets for expression, such as art, writing, or talking about their feelings, can aid in processing grief in a constructive manner. By acknowledging and validating the child's emotions rather than dismissing them, adults can promote a sense of emotional well-being and resilience in children. This approach emphasizes the importance of honoring one's feelings and encourages healthy emotional expression as an essential aspect of the grieving process. Adults may also avoid providing age-appropriate explanations about death, leading to confusion and unresolved questions. That was certainly the case for growing up, and it wasn't until my exposure to the grief recovery method and facilitating groups for grieving children as a volunteer for a hospice agency that this became clear. Children are open and receptive to honest conversations about death. It's important to use age-appropriate explanations using factual words like dead and died to avoid confusion. Using vague phrases like passed away, went to sleep, he is in a better place, he or she is in heaven now, or we lost him or her are not appropriate to say to children. These lead to confusion and questions about when they will return. Be honest about death and encourage children to ask questions. Children may need help understanding the permanence of death and exactly what that means. Utilizing dismissive statements such as "you're too young to understand" can also have detrimental effects on children's emotional well-being and hinder their ability to process grief effectively. By shutting down communication in this manner, adults inadvertently invalidate the child's emotions and experiences, leaving them feeling unheard and dismissed. This approach not only ignores the child's capacity for empathy and comprehension, but also creates a barrier to open dialogue about their grief. A more constructive alternative involves engaging with the child's feelings in a compassionate and age-appropriate manner, encouraging them to express their emotions through words, art, or play can provide a therapeutic outlet for grief. By acknowledging the child's feelings and offering them space to explore and share their thoughts, adults can promote a sense of validation and support. This approach not only helps children process their grief, but also strengthens the bond between the child and the adult, creating a safe and nurturing environment for emotional expression and healing. Urging children to swiftly move past their grief or get over it prematurely can impede their emotional healing and create long-lasting negative impacts. By imposing timelines or expectations on child's grieving process, adults risk invalidating the child's emotions and diminishing the significance of their loss. This pressure can cause the child to suppress their feelings, leading to unresolved grief that can manifest in various ways later in life. A more supportive approach involves recognizing the individual nature of grief and allowing the child to navigate their emotions at their own pace. Encouraging open communication and validation of the child's feelings can aid in cultivating a healthy grieving process. By offering reassurance, patience, and understanding, adults can create a safe space for the child to express their emotions and work through their grief in a manner that feels natural to them. This approach not only respects the child's emotional journey, but also promotes resilience and emotional well-being in the long run. Attempting to replace a loss for children by providing substitutes or distractions can inadvertently undermine their grieving process and emotional growth. While the intention may stem from a desire to alleviate the child's pain, this approach often overlooks the significance of the loss and ignores the child's need to grieve and come to terms with their emotions. A more effective approach involves acknowledging the irreplaceable nature of the loss and supporting the child in honoring their memories and emotions. Encouraging open conversations about the significance of what was lost and validating the child's feelings can help them process their grief in a healthy way. Creating rituals or memorials to commemorate the lost person or pet can provide a sense of closure and continuity. Rather than substituting the loss, adults can offer comfort and reassurance, allowing the child to express their emotions freely. By nurturing an environment where grief is accepted and supported, adults can empower children to navigate their emotions with resilience and cultivate a deeper understanding of loss and healing. Sudden shifts in behavior or academic performance in children may serve as indications of underlying unresolved grief. Rather than dismissing these changes as typical childhood fluctuations in behavior, adults should consider them as potential signs of emotional distress or grief that the child is facing. Instead of jumping to conclusions or applying quick fixes, it is crucial to adopt a more empathetic and supportive approach. Encouraging dialogue about their emotions and experiences can offer valuable insights into the root cause of these behavioral changes. Providing opportunities for the child to share their thoughts through creative outlets like art, writing, or play can facilitate the process of their grief in a constructive manner. By engaging with the child's emotions and offering consistent support, adults can help the child navigate their grief and work towards healing. Seeking professional help is critical if a child's grief becomes overwhelming or significantly impacts their daily life. Grief can manifest in various ways in children, including changes in behavior, academic performance, and emotional well-being. When a child's ability to function and cope with their emotions is severely compromised by grief, a mental health professional, therapist, or counselor can provide necessary support and guidance. These trained professionals can help the child navigate their emotions, process their grief in a healthy manner, and develop coping strategies to manage their feelings effectively. By addressing the root causes of overwhelming grief with professional assistance, children can receive specialized care tailored to their needs, ensuring they receive the necessary support to heal and move forward positively. The mission of Healing Our Grieving Hearts is to provide energy healing and spiritual support and guide individuals through the process of grief recovery and purpose discovery. For more information on how to benefit from grief healing modalities that I offer, go to my website at www.healingourgrievinghearts.com, where you can also schedule a complimentary grief breakthrough session. To follow me on Facebook, go to facebook.com/k.fontana. As part of the grief recovery method, I also offer a program called Helping Children with Loss for you or someone you know who has a child struggling with grief. Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Our Grieving Hearts podcast. Remember, you are not alone in your grief, and your experiences and emotions are valid. Join me next Saturday at 10 a.m. Arizona time as we continue to explore the human experience and grief and loss during times of global conflict, crisis, or disaster. Until then, be kind to yourself.